Hey guys, it's Matador, and I recently put up a video that was a reaction to Kingdom Hearts 2.8's trailer, and I actually got a first on YouTube for myself. I got more dislikes than likes on that video, which of course means I got like 4 dislikes, so, you know, take that with a grain of salt. Now, I do also want to say that everybody who left comments on that video is actually really nice to me. I know that doesn't happen too often on YouTube, but everybody was very civil, and I really appreciate that. Anyway, it goes without saying that it's a subject of some debate as to whether or not the Kingdom Hearts series is good. And to be fair, I did unfairly criticize a lot of things about the trailer because I haven't played a lot of the most recent games, so to me, of course, the story is a little bit confusing because I don't know it, and I admitted that as much in the video, but I wanted to go back and put my thoughts on that together a little bit more coherently. I also might actually play Birth by Sleep on this channel at some point, so go ahead and leave a comment if you think that'd be interesting, or if you think that'd be something you might want to see at some point. So like I said, I had some time to put my thoughts together a little bit more, and I did want to take some time to go back through some of the criticisms about the game series that I do have in a little bit more depth. So here we go. My main problem with Kingdom Hearts isn't that the story of the series is too complex, because it isn't. It's actually pretty straightforward. My problem isn't even with the characters or even with the dialogue, even though I will say dialogue is one of my major complaints about the game. My problem is more the way in which the story is presented to you. Tetsuya Nomura is the director of the Kingdom Hearts series, and he's been kind of at the helm from the beginning. He makes all the major creative decisions, he designs all the characters, and he's not a bad director. I'm not saying that he's a bad artist or a bad designer or a bad writer or anything like that. But I kind of realized he is kind of the George Lucas of the video game world. And again, I don't have any problem with George Lucas. I like the guy. Just hear me out here for a few seconds. He obviously puts a lot of thought into the story because it's his and he really enjoys it, so he takes a lot of care when he constructs his narrative. But he also adds to that narrative over time as it goes along. That's kind of to be expected with a story though, right? I mean, time goes on, stories change, narratives evolve. But he also adds onto it and expands it to the point that he feels the need to go back to the original and change it and add to it in order to make his new story elements make sense together. And that's why we get so many re-releases of these games, just like with George Lucas going back through and updating Star Wars and then feeling the need to re-release a new version that reflects his current vision of the story. Tetsuya Nomura seems to enjoy doing the same thing. He adds new details to the story and new story elements, but then he feels like he needs to release a different version to drag it all together and make it all make sense. It kind of seems like he's just adding certain elements to the story and making them up as he goes along, which there's nothing wrong with that. Like, all story writers and creators have to do that at some point. I mean, you can't have honestly expected him to have known 15 years ago where the story of Kingdom Hearts was going to go. After all, the original Kingdom Hearts needed to be fairly self-contained in case it turned out to be a flop. You know, actually this metaphor works out pretty well. Kingdom Hearts really is kind of the Star Wars of video games. You have multiple re-releases with added content, prequels that raise more questions than they answer, and an ever-expanding universe that's honestly gotten a little bit too wide for its own good. What you end up with after all that is a world and a story that can be a little bit off-putting to newcomers and actually even can drive some fans away who may have not come back after the originals. Now, again, to be fair, this is a tough balance that all series struggle with at some point. I mean, how do you keep adding to the story and to the lore without building up your universe to the point that you become kind of off-putting to all but the most dedicated of superfans? A lot of properties struggle with that, and really Kingdom Hearts is not the worst offender on that list. I do have one other major issue with the series, and it's one that I've talked a little bit about before. And I will admit that with the HD remixes, Square Enix kind of took care of that problem, but it still bugs me that it was a problem in the first place. It all started when they released Chain of Memories for Game Boy Advance. Now, I played that game way back when because I just kind of expected it to be just kind of a one-off, just a little tie-in game that wasn't really all that essential to the story. After all, when a series releases a game on a totally different system, and especially on a handheld console, that was usually the case, right? Not the case at all. Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories had some very essential setup information for Kingdom Hearts 2 to the point that I had to actually explain to my sister what was happening because she hadn't played Chain of Memories. Sure, there was an intro cutscene that kind of summed it up, but it was really more of a glorified music video like all of them, and it did not do a good enough job filling in the details. And then they did the same thing several more times. They released several games on several different platforms, all of which were very essential to understanding the complete story. I mean, these were really critical components of the backstory to the point that, like, I need to play these games before Kingdom Hearts 3 comes out because I will be completely lost if I don't. And I'm not suggesting it's bad to have multiple games that tie into your story. It just kind of seemed a little bit short-sighted to me. I mean, why release so many games on so many different consoles while having them all essential to the plot? I mean, a huge chunk of the people who play the Kingdom Hearts games just couldn't afford to get them all. I mean, there was no way I was going to go out and play Birth by Sleep because it was the only game that I was interested in that was on PSP. And I mean, those are way too expensive. I was never going to get that just for one game. Anyway, like I said, they did fix this by bundling the games all together on the HD remixes, but it bothers me that so many fans had to wait for so long to play games that were already out because they just didn't have the means to play them. And I just don't see where the logic was in that. I mean, am I missing something? So maybe I just don't get it. Maybe I'm just overthinking this, but tell me what you guys think. Do you agree, disagree, violently disagree? Let me know down below in the comments, and don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Drink until I was of drinking age, and I don't know if that makes me boring or interesting, but I guess you can decide. Number 3 is I'm actually married. I've actually been married for about 3 years now. Isn't that right, babe? She's an A.